We have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads. But we're going to
We
start
sure do.
with, Zachary in Alabama. You're on with Johnny and Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it says here, the ability of an atheist to correctly assess evidence for God from your perspective, it seems like they're assessing evidence incorrectly.
Right.
So, first of all, this isn't about how an atheist assesses evidence, because I used to be a Christian, and I was a Christian when I began assessing the evidence.
I don't know. I can't really assess that, whether or not that's true, because, there are many Christians who claim to be Christians, but they aren't. So.
Okay. So why should? Well, hang on. Are you suggesting that I didn't actually sincerely believe?
I don't know.
Okay. How do you know what I believe now?
What do you mean?
What do I believe now? Am I really an atheist?
Well, I think you said you are.
I also said I used to be a Christian, but you don't seem to want to believe that part, because that part may conflict with your narrative that you're getting ready to do.
Well, no, within the Christian worldview, there are people who claim to be Christian.
Okay.
You do realize, okay, go ahead, make your case.
Yeah.
My first question is, do you think it's possible that Christianity is true?
I have no idea if it's possible or not. I don't know that it's impossible. Both possibility and impossibility are claims that would need to be demonstrated, and I don't think they have. I'm not concerned whether or not it's possible or not. I'm concerned whether or not it's actually true.
All right. Well, let's imagine that it is possible, and then certain verses in the Bible would also be true, such as 1 Corinthians 2, verse 14, that says, the natural man does not receive the spiritual things of God. Verses in Proverbs, such as, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And other verses like, the wisdom of the world is foolishness to God. If these verses are true, then it's possible that atheists have this inherent disadvantage at seeing the truth, because their presuppositions and their attitudes prevent them from doing so.
Yeah,
by judging the evidence as
that's not the way logic or reasoning works. An argument is either valid in structure and sound, irrespective of what the individual's biases are. Either you can construct a sound argument for something, or you can't. Can you construct a sound argument for God? Because if your whole point is to say that the wisdom of God is foolishness to the world, as a way of saying, hey, if somebody says logical reasoning is X, but I have this God-based belief and I don't have to pay attention to that, then we're never going to agree. We have nothing to talk about.
On top of that, if we assume the Bible is true, then atheists would by definition be wrong or insufficient. We should believe it. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying it's totally possible that Christianity is true, and that by your presuppositions,
it's totally possible.
But how do you?
What presupposition do I have that's getting in the way of me accepting that Christianity is true? And first of all, you saying that Christianity is possibly true doesn't mean that it is. We're just saying that for the sake of argument. My only concern is whether it's actually true.
My argument is, if you rely on your ability to judge the evidence, you're presupposing that Christianity is false, because if it were true,
no, I'm not.
Then your methods would be flawed from the beginning.
No, that's not true. I don't have to presuppose Christianity is false. All I have to do is be willing to work with logical reasoning. Now, if your claim is that if Christianity is true, then logical reasoning is no longer reliable, then that's a different thing to discuss.
Well, assuming that you can only use logical reasoning is to assume that there are no other paths to truth, but Christianity says there are. So that's why I say you presuppose.
I don't care what Christianity says, because it isn't true until it's demonstrated that it's true. And Christianity,
you're relying on your own methods to see if it's true. And if Christianity is true, then your whole process is flawed. Do you recognize
No,
that?
no. That's the whole point. Even if Christianity is true, logical reasoning is still valid and sound.
I agree.
Okay. So you don't get to say that if Christianity is true, my whole methodology is flawed, because my whole methodology is logical reasoning. Is there a logically sound argument for Christianity?
A logically sound argument for Christianity. Well, you said that logic, I mean, I do agree with you that logic is still sound. It's just that within the Christian framework, it's not necessarily logic that brings you to God. I mean, in the Bible, it says that faith comes by grace, revelation. I mean, you're only relying on logic that you can understand.
No.
You don't. Mind.
No, sir. That suggests there's logic that's beyond our comprehension. When you just talked about
Well,
faith,
there is.
no, sir. You just talked about faith and grace, neither of which are logic.
Well, they're not logical to you.
They're not logic. So here,
I didn't say they were logic.
Let me ask you the same question we asked somebody else. Is it possible for me to believe something based on faith, and that thing I believe is wrong, that is not true?
Yes.
And it's also possible for me to believe something based on faith, and that thing is true.
Yes.
How do we tell which things are true or not? Is
that your question?
Yeah, I was going to add more and I stopped. How do we, so if faith can lead me to true beliefs and faith can lead me to false beliefs, then faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. And faith cannot tell me which of two positions is true. So what method must I use to determine which of those positions is true?
Wait, so you said that faith can sometimes lead you to a true belief or to truth? Is that what you said?
You can believe something that's true based on faith, and you can believe something that's not true based on faith. And so if faith as a method can lead you to something true and something not true, then faith is no method to get to truth.
Well, to say that faith is no method to get to truth is to say that the Bible is false, because it does say that faith can get you to truth.
Fine, then I will assert that if the Bible says that faith, no. Let me back up. I didn't say faith couldn't lead you to truth. I said that faith could lead you to something that's true and something that's not true, which means that faith is not a reliable path to truth. Simply saying, I believe faith doesn't tell us whether or not it's true.
Right. Faith wouldn't work in all circumstances. Like I could have faith.
Correct. So, faith on its own is useless.
Well, it depends on the context.
No, it doesn't depend on context. Faith on its own is useless as a path to truth, because if I believe something based on faith, that doesn't tell me whether or not what I believe is true. So faith is not the measure of whether or not something is true.
I'd like to hear what you think that context is. What's the context that you think makes faith reliable?
I mean, I could have faith in a lot of things. Like, I could have faith that I'll get $1 million tomorrow. But faith in God is a bit different, because within the Christian framework, it is faith that leads you to truth. And so to say that faith is not reliable is to already assume.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so what you're doing is question begging. You're beginning by assuming that Christianity is true. And if Christianity is true, then faith becomes a path to truth, while you've already acknowledged that faith is not a reliable path to truth. You don't get to do that.
Can I just make one more? Can I make a point? Can I make my point?
Sure.
So my point is, like, you can't really exclude certain paths of truth, like faith.
Yes, you can.
Like the Bible says things like,
yeah. Why can't you?
Yes.
Why can't you?
Here, hang on. I got a perfect. Easy, Zach. Is a coin flip a reliable pathway to discerning the truth?
That's a strange question. I would say no, though.
I would say no too, because let's say I've got two choices. I either think I'm going to get $1 million tomorrow or I'm not. So I flip a coin and I say, if it's heads, I'm going to get $1 million today. So I did a coin toss, and I have no reason to think that led me to the truth, right?
Right.
Okay. Can you demonstrate that faith is more reliable than a coin toss?
Well, it's hard for me to demonstrate it to you.
No, sir.
You're not the one that has the faith.
No, sir. That's not the way reason works. There's not something that's true for you or something hard to demonstrate to you. Can you demonstrate that faith is more reliable than a coin toss? Because everybody who's tried, including the Templeton Foundation, keeps demonstrating that faith is no more reliable than a coin toss.
Well, again, you're comparing a coin toss with like a whole religion.
No, sir, I'm not. I'm talking about methodologies and suggesting that something.
Right.
You're suggesting that something is reliable, and I'm saying that I have no demonstration that it is any more reliable than a coin toss. Can you demonstrate that?
Again, it's hard for me to demonstrate.
Then you shouldn't have called.
Given to you by experience. Given to you, but I'm saying you're excluding the possibility.
I'm not excluding the possibility. I'm asking for evidence for a proposition. That is not excluding a possibility. I'm asking you for evidence, and you are not giving it.
Zachary, can I ask you a question? If there, let's say there, Zachary, let's say we've got two sets of parents, and each set has a child who's dying of childhood leukemia. And both sets of parents have faith that if they pray to God to cure their child of leukemia, that child will recover. And one child gets better and one child does not get better. Okay? Were the parents whose child died, but who had faith that their child would get better, was their faith justified?
I'm sorry, can you restate the question?
So you got two sets of parents. One set of each set of parents has a child dying of leukemia. Both sets of parents pray to God to heal their child of leukemia. One child recovers, one child does not. Both sets of parents have faith that by praying to God wholeheartedly, that their child will recover. One child recovers, one child does not. Does the parents of the child who did not recover, was their faith justified?
Well, you're talking about faith through prayer. I'm talking about faith as a means to truth. I don't see how this is relevant.
Can you demonstrate faith as a means to truth is more reliable than a coin toss? If you say not to me, I'm
How do you want me to demonstrate it?
I'm asking you if you can. What an absolutely telling question. I'm asking you if you can demonstrate it, and you're asking me how to do it.
I'm claiming that it's a personal quest of truth through faith, not something that, here's you some faith, here's you some faith. Like, I can't give faith to you.
I didn't ask you to give me faith. I asked you to demonstrate the reliability of the method that you're using. If I hold up a ruler and say I measured this and it's 3 inches, and you say, how do you know that that's 3 inches? I can show you the ruler, and I can show you that it works on everything else. I can show that at least it's consistent. And if you say, hey, your ruler's wrong, that was printed incorrectly, here's the actual standard, and now we know that this is actually 4 inches. Cool, we've corrected something. This is the methodology by which we go about determining whether or not something is true. Can you demonstrate that faith is a reliable pathway to truth?
Well, for me to demonstrate that, I have to demonstrate that the belief gained through faith leads to the actual truth. So if are you asking me, is the faith in God reliable in determining the truth that God exists?
Anything.
Zachary, you believe it. Explain why.
I could have faith that leaping from this high part or this high cliff to the next one would save me. I don't know it. And through having the faith, I might actually make it. And so therefore I discover the truth through faith. That's a different context.
No. You discovered the truth by actual investigation. Faith convinced you that
you can actually investigate God through faith.
You didn't know that it was true.
God through
You
faith.
didn't know that it was true until you put it to the test. It wasn't faith that led you to the truth. It is
Well,
coincidence.
why would I jump if I have
It is
faith?
coincidence
I
that
could die. I could die.
your faith was coincidentally connected to the truth.
Can you say the same for Christianity, that faith is coincidentally to discovering the truth of God?
Can I say the same for
How
Christianity?
do you know that?
I'm talking about an epistemological methodology and whether or not that leads you to the truth. The discovery of the truth in your example was actually jumping from one thing to the other, not faith. It was putting it to the test. That is how we get to the truth, not faith.
I'm saying there are some truth claims in this world that you could not attain to if you did not have faith.
Like what?
Like what?
Well, for example, jumping from one cliff to the next cliff, because I didn't have faith that I could make it, and I wouldn't jump.
You don't have to have any faith that you can make it. You just have to be willing to do it to find out. I don't know, for example, I genuinely don't know if I went out and stood at the back porch, how far I could jump from a standing jump. I genuinely don't know. But I don't need faith that I'm going to make it 4 feet. If I'm going to make it, I put it to the test by actually doing the jump. And the truth is determined by the data, not by what my internal faith led me to. Maybe I can jump 4 feet. Maybe I can't jump 4 feet. The only way that we know what
I have faith you could jump more than 4 feet.
I don't. The only way we could know what the truth is for me to actually do it, not the faith. Faith doesn't lead us to truth. It's not a methodology. It's the excuse people give when they don't have a good reason. Because if somebody asks, why do you believe something? And you have good reasons, you give the good reasons. You don't ever say, I have faith.
Yeah, Zachary, in what other avenue of life do you say, excuse me, in what other avenues of life do you say, I believe this based on faith? I'm gonna buy this car. I think it's a good choice. I just have it on faith. No, you have it because you've done your research. You took a look at the car. You took it for a test drive. You maybe took someone with more knowledge about cars and they did an under the hood examination of it. You don't do it based on faith, right?
Well, I wouldn't say any belief is totally formed on having 100% evidence. There's like a mixture of trust in your ability to actually perceive the evidence. You have to believe that, the world operates by logical what?
Yeah. So the thing is,
so you're saying that you know everything that you believe.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
As a fact.
No, because you're no longer talking about the same thing. None of us are claiming absolute certainty. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can be absolute about anything. But the things that I believe are not based only on faith, because faith is not a reliable pathway to the truth. My beliefs are based on evidence.
But see, by relying, what type of evidence? You're excluding faith as a means for discovering evidence within the Christian framework.
No, sir, I didn't. No, sir, I did not exclude it. It excluded itself by demonstrating never demonstrating that it has that it is in any way a reliable method to truth. It excluded itself in the same way that the coin toss excluded itself. It is not
using the lack of evidence to make a claim that faith can never be valid.
That is,
you haven't experienced it to be valid. You say it isn't valid.
No, sir. I wish you would fucking listen. Can faith, as I said 20 minutes ago, faith, if you take something on faith, you might be right and you might not be right. But whether or not you're right, the justified belief that you are right is based on the evidence and not based on faith, because faith has no mechanism to tell you whether or not you're right.
I still think by
still with us?
Yeah.
To say that, do you think it's possible that you might obey however the Bible commands you to do in order to seek faith? Do you not see that as a possible means to truth?
Why would I? No, sir. That has nothing. That's separate from faith. So you could come up with something and say, hey, if you try to live your life by what the Bible says, if you live a biblical life, this will lead you to truth. That's separate from faith. Faith is believing something that is something is true without good evidence for it. But why would I want to live a biblical life at all? I don't feel like I should be enslaving the people around me and beating them until they're nearly dead. I don't believe that women are inferior to men. I don't believe in taking over entire nations from other people. I don't believe in keeping the young virgin girls for myself. I don't believe that the Bible advocates for morals in a large sense at all. So if I can look at the book and see that it is not a good guide for life, and my position is based on evidence, then when somebody comes along and tells me that it is, and theirs is based on faith, I know that they don't understand the nature of evidence and what should be required before something's believable.
But do you not recognize the possibility that your assessment of that evidence is flawed?
Yes,
because if Christianity is true,
that. I have never suggested that I'm perfect, but do you think slavery is okay?
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with slavery.
Okay, goodbye. You
I think mistreatment of slaves is different from slavery.
Okay, so first of all, I would disagree with both of them. All right. Let me correct that. Intrinsically wrong. We'll set that aside because that one I may not agree with. The Bible allows you to own slaves.
Sure.
The Bible allows you to beat slaves.
Is that in the New Testament?
No, Exodus 21 and Leviticus 25 and Deuteronomy. But the Bible allows you to beat slaves. Hang on, Zachary. When I said the Bible allows you to beat slaves, why did you ask if it was in the New Testament?
Because I know in the New Testament it says to treat your slaves with respect. I mean, because although you are a master, you have your own master in heaven, which is God.
No, the New Testament.
You would treat your slaves.
The New Testament tells slaves to obey their masters, even the cruel ones. But it doesn't matter whether something's in the New Testament or Old Testament. The Old Testament, you can beat your slaves as long as they don't die within a couple of days. Was that it?
Depends on.
Depends on what?
What?
Depends on what?
I suppose it depends on how the slave is acting. I'm not totally sure what the rules are for that.
Go fuck yourself completely.
Yeah.
You think it's okay to own people's
kind of rude.
I know it's kind of rude. What's more rude than you dehumanizing people, suggesting that it's okay to own them as property and that you can beat them if they misbehave? What's more rude than that, you shithead?
Do you want to be a slave, Zachary?
Yeah.
Is that totally cool?
You willing to be our slave under the rules of Exodus 21 that your God put down? You want to be our slave?
Well, according to the Bible, slaves, the more they are obedient, the more they are blessed. From a Christian worldview, being a slave, doesn't really mean anything because the pleasures or the pains of this life are meaningless compared to what happens in the afterlife.
Aha. I'm sorry that you have sacrificed both your intellect, your any hope of a sound epistemology, and your sense of value as a human being on the altar of a repugnant, immoral book, such that you can sacrifice
morality.
Such that you can sacrifice the entirety of the only life you know you're going to get, as if it was just a place to wipe your feet before the real life begins. The rest of us are going to focus on this life because it's the only one we know we're going to get, and we're going to do what we can to encourage people to treat them well, treat each other well, to not have slaves, to not have women as second-tier citizens, because I don't give a fuck what happens in another life. I care about what happens in this life. And if you don't care what happens in this life, why did you call?
If I don't care what happens in this life, why did I call?
Correct.
Well, I think
Aren't you just biding your time to get to the afterlife?
Yeah. Why are you still here?
What? Why am I still here?
Yeah, did you brush your teeth today? Why'd you bother? It's quarantine. It's all that stuff. But why do you bother doing anything if this life doesn't mean anything?
Are you racist? Do you hate people of other races that aren't yours?
I don't hate people of other races.
How do you feel about the people of the nations around you?
People of the nations around me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think it's fine to take them as slaves?
That's a pretty broad. It's a pretty broad question. I mean, they have their own cultures. What I think a slave.
Is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with being racist? I mean, after all, this life doesn't matter, right? So there's nothing wrong with being racist. There's nothing wrong with killing people, right?
Well, that could affect your soul, and it would therefore affect you in the afterlife. Doing certain things.
But hang on, Zachary. If I killed a bunch of people and hated a bunch of people for their race, and I raped a bunch of people, can't God forgive me for all that?
Well, God could forgive you, but that's relying on the possibility that you would actually, become a Christian afterwards, which is pretty risky in my opinion.
So you think that God can just forgive me for raping and killing and enslaving and being a racist, and that this somehow makes up for it?
If you repent and change your lifestyle and you're renewed, because Christ did pay for all sins, yes.
Okay.
No one's perfect.
How did he pay for all the sins? I'm always wondering this one. How does that work?
Yeah, because like if Johnny punches,
I might not be able to.
If Johnny punches me in the nose and you tell me that you're sorry, that doesn't do anything to fix my nose. And if he steals $100 out of my wallet, and you just tell me that you forgave him, it doesn't. I'm still out $100. So how does God fix stuff?
Yeah, how does that work? Break it down for us, please.
Okay, well, he hung up. So,
well,
it's frustrating to me to watch the people who genuinely don't care about this life when they really, really do. They tell you, oh, this life is like dirty rags. Yes, I'm familiar with that verse, and I think it's polluting minds because I don't think this life is like dirty rags. I think this life is both wonderful and terrible. I think it is filled with good things and bad things, but it's the only life that I know I'm going to get. And if you tell me, you might as well come to me and say, hey, you know what? If you just jump off this cliff, actually, let me push you off this cliff right now, because then you're not committing suicide. Which, by the way, the Bible isn't against. That's they invented the anti-suicide thing at some point. But then you speed yourself on to the afterlife. It's like we talked about with Andrea Yates drowning her little kids. If you loved your kids and wanted to make sure they were going to spend eternity in heaven, that's the best thing you could possibly do. And yet we look at that, even Christians, even the guy who just hung up on us, and they would all look at Andrea Yates as if she was a monster, because she was. So it's funny that the truth can be sitting there staring you right in the face, and religions keep you from recognizing it.